Chapter 1. They called him Moish the Beetle, as if his entire life he had never had a real last name. He was the expert in the Jewish house of prayer, a shutbul. The Jews of Siget, the little town where I spent my childhood, liked him. He was poor and lived in complete poverty. Our neighbors, while they did help the poor, did not particularly like poor people. Moish the Beetle was the exception. He stayed out of people's way. His presence bothered no one. He had mastered the art of making himself invisible. Physically, he was awkward as a clown. His shyness made people smile. As for me, I liked his big, dreamy eyes looking off into the distance. He spoke very little. I met him in 1941. I was almost 13 and deeply religious. By day, I studied the Talmud, and by night I would run to the synagogue to pray. One day I asked my father to find me a master who could guide me in the studies of the Kabbalah. "You are too young for that. You must be 30 years old before studying the Kabbalah with a master. First you must study the basic subjects. Those you are able to comprehend." My father was an educated man, rather unemotional. He rarely displayed his feelings, not even within his family, and was more involved with the happiness of others than with that of his own family. The Jewish community of Siget respected him tremendously. People frequently asked for his advice on public and even private matters. There were 4 of us children: Hilda, the oldest, then Bea. I was the third and the only son. Tisbora was the youngest. My parents ran a store. Hilda and Bea helped with the work. As for me, my place was in the house of study, or so my parents said. "There are no Kabbalah experts in Siget," my father would often tell me. He wanted to remove the idea of studying Kabbalah from my mind. However, I succeeded on my own in finding a master for myself in the person of Moish the Beetle. He had watched me one day as I prayed at dusk. "Why do you cry when you pray?" he asked, as though he knew me well. "I don't know," I answered, confused. I had never asked myself that question. I cried because something inside me felt the need to cry. That was all I knew. "Why do you pray?" he asked after a moment. Why did I pray? Strange question. Why did I live? Why did I breathe? "I don't know," I told him, even more troubled and confused. "I don't know." From that day on, I saw him often. He explained to me with great emphasis that man comes closer to God through questions he asks him. Man and God replies, but we don't understand his replies. We cannot understand them because they live in our souls and remain there until we die. The real answers, Eliezer, you will find only within yourself. "And why do you pray, Moish?" I asked him. "I pray to God within me for the strength to ask him the real questions." We spoke that way almost every evening, remaining in the synagogue long after all the others had gone, sitting in the darkness where only a few candles provided a little light. And Moish the Beetle, the poorest of the poor of Siget, spoke to me for hours about the Kabbalah and its mysteries. This began my religious education. Chapter 2. And then, one day, all immigrant Jews were exiled from Siget, and Moish the Beetle was an immigrant. Crammed into cattle cars by Hungarian police, they cried silently. Standing on the station platform, we too were crying. The train disappeared over the horizon. All that was left was thick, dirty smoke. Behind me, someone said, sighing, "What do you expect? That's war." The immigrants were quickly forgotten. A few days after they left, it was rumored that they were in Galicia, working, and even though they were content with their destiny. Then weeks and months Days went by, then weeks and months. Life was normal again. A calm wind blew through our homes. The store owners were doing good business, the students lived among their books, and the children played in the streets. One day, as I was about to enter the synagogue, I saw Moish the beetle sitting on a bench near the entrance. He told me what had happened to him and his companions. The train with the Jewish immigrants had crossed the Hungarian border, and once on Polish land, had been taken over by the Gestapo. The train had stopped. The Jews were ordered to get off and onto waiting trucks. The trucks drove toward a forest. There, everybody was ordered to get out. They were forced to dig tremendous holes in the ground. When they had finished their work, the men from the Gestapo began theirs. Very callously, they shot their prisoners, who were forced to approach the holes one by one. Babies were thrown into the air and used as targets for the machine guns. This took place in a forest. How had he, Moish the beetle, been able to escape? By a miracle. He was injured in the leg and left for dead. Day after day, he went from one Jewish house to the next, telling his story and that of Malka, the youngest girl who lay dying for 3 days, and that of Toby, the man who begged to die before his sons were killed. Moish was not the same after that. The happiness in his eyes was gone. He no longer sang. He no longer mentioned either God or Kabbalah. He spoke only of what he had seen. But people not only refused to believe his stories, they refused to listen. Some even said that they only wanted people to pity him, or that he was imagining things. Others callously said that he had gone mad. As for Moish, he cried and pleaded, "Jews, listen to me. That's all I ask of you. No money, no pity, just listen to me." He kept shouting in synagogue between the prayer at dusk and the evening prayer. Even I do not believe him. I often sat next with him after services and listened to his stories, trying to understand his sadness, but all I felt was pity. "They think I'm mad," he whispered, and tears, like drops of rain, flowed from his eyes. Once I asked him the question, "Why do you want people to believe you so much?" "In your place, I would not care whether they believed me or not." He closed his eyes as if to escape time. "You don't understand," he said in despair. "You cannot understand. I was saved miraculously. I succeeded in coming back. Where did I get my strength? I wanted to return to Siget, to describe to you my deaths, so that you might ready yourselves while there is still time. Life? I no longer care to live. I am alone, but I wanted to come back to you to warn you. Only no one is listening to me." That was toward the end of 1942. Thereafter, life seemed normal once again. London radio, which we listened to every evening, announced encouraging news: the daily bombings of Germany and Stalingrad, the preparation of the Second Front. And so we, the Jews of Siget, waited for the better days that it seemed were soon to come. I continued to devote myself to my studies, Talmud during the day and Kabbalah at night. My father took care of his business in the community. My grandfather came to spend the holidays with us. My mother was beginning to think it was time to find a husband for Hilda. Thus passed the year 1943.